we're on the soft part. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to count you in, and we're starting off soft. 1, 2, here we go. Oops. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, to make sure you're soft enough. Okay, next line. Okay, get ready to be loud. Soft again. How about that? Makes a big difference, doesn't it? Because I can talk almost without raising my voice. And that's the way you want to be in a band. You want to have a singer be able to sing softly in one section of the song, and another section where they have to really scream. Maybe right here. Maybe right here. Okay, so it's a real simple example and demonstration of dynamics, but it's very important in making music interesting and exciting to listen to, okay? And I'm sure you've heard that all over the radio and music that you know and love and didn't really think that much about it, but it's often overlooked when you're first studying by yourself because you're so absorbed with learning the material and learning theoretical things that you forget about simple things like dynamics. And that has everything to do with how hard you hit your guitar and how much control you have when you hit it. So try to work on that in this basic progression and employ some of those techniques maybe in some of the other progressions we've used. Okay? Good. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about some chords. After we've talked about dynamics, I think there's a good opportunity to add some more chords to our vocabulary. Look over here on the board if you could, and you'll see that I've changed the names of some of our open string chords, and you might find that interesting. All of a sudden there's a number after each root. There's not just major or minor, but now it says 7. Okay, now you might be, except for this new chord over here that we just learned, you might be wondering, what does that mean? Well, if you look a little closer, you're going to see this first C chord that we learned a few lessons ago. All of a sudden now, there's another note, another tone added to the chord. A tone that we've never heard before. Listen to the character of the tone. Okay, what is it about that note that sounds interesting or it's different than the other chords? It's more complex. There's some more structure to the chords because that is called the 7th of the chord. In other words, there's a root, there's a 3rd, and there's a 5th, but now there's also a flat 7. Okay, now what does that mean, flat 7? Meaning if you went all the way up the C major scale and you played up to the B, in this case it's a B flat. So the B is the natural major 7th, and this is called the dominant 7th or flat 7. So now that's in the chord. And that creates a different kind of a feel to the chord. It's a little bit more bluesy, it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more tension in the sound of the chord, but it's just more interesting. It's just a different kind of a chord. And that's what happens when you harmonize, as we talked about before, our major scales, one more note to the next 3rd, we get 7th chords, and we're going to talk about that in another lesson as well. But I just wanted to introduce dominant seventh chords as a chord formation just to show you some other types of forms. So it's easy to achieve the seventh generally in most of these chords because we just take a note that was already there that was a doubled root and just release it, in this case, to the flat seven. This chord before, when it was just an A chord, had another A right there. So now we just release it to the flat seven, and now we have a dominant seventh. So remember, we had this major. Now we have dominant seven. It's a little bit more bluesy sounding. We have C7 here. It's bluesy. And A7. Nice dominant sound. Okay? We had our G chord before that had a root on top, but we already had a root here and another root here. So we've got plenty of roots to spare. So what we'll do is we'll take one of the roots and move it down to the flat seven. And now we've got a dominant seventh because we've got root, third, fifth, and now a flat seven. The E major that we had before, where we had an E here and an E here, we release the E down to the flat seven, which is this open string right here. And now we've got E7. Okay? And then finally, on the D chord, we had a root here and a root here, but we just removed the second root here and dropped it down to the flat seven. And there's our dominant seventh chord. So now we've learned 5 new dominant chords. So we've got C7, we've got A7, we've got G7, we've got E7, and we've got D7. Okay, so we're going to be able to do a lot with those chords in later lessons. So I just want you to spend a little time working with the dominant chords, perhaps playing them through a cycle of a chord, maybe go back to some of the previous chord progressions that utilized the major chords and just make them seventh chords, and you can get more mileage out of those previous progressions. Okay, now that we've learned those dominant seventh chords that I've just shown you on the board, I want to put them together in a quick little progression so you can have something to practice and kind of get your fingers used to going back and forth between the voicings. Okay? So let's take a look at my progression that I've just finished writing on the board for you. Okay? I strung together the A and the E chords because they naturally sound like they fit together, but I thought, well, I want to include the rest of them, so I did the same thing with the D and the G chord. They fit together really nicely. Right? So even though A and E sound like they fit together, it didn't sound bad going to the D and the G. And I thought, what the heck? I have one chord left that I've shown you that I didn't play, and I put it on the end, and it seems like the whole thing fits pretty good. So what we're going to do, naturally, dominant chords have somewhat of a bluesy sound, a little bit more R&B rhythm feel. So I'm going to play these dominant chords over the drum machine groove that gives me a little bit more of an R&B feel. So check it out. If I played the chords just by myself, not yet, but like this, it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's stop here. Okay, so I didn't really write out the exact strumming pattern I'm playing, but it's just something that feels good against that groove. And it's just simply. Okay, so it's a combination of strums and short attacks. Notice that my hand sometimes comes down and attack and kind of chuts off the chord. That sounds good in this kind of music too. So here we go. You're going to play along. We're going to play the first section twice because the repeats are there. And then we move down to the next section and we play that one time. Okay, here we go. 1. I'm going to count us in with the drum machine first, and then we're going to take off. So here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. comes D7. Back to A7. Great, here comes D7. G7. Okay, back to the top. All right, that feels pretty funky, doesn't it? All right, sounding good. Okay, anyway, that's it for today's lesson. Hope you guys had a good time with this one. So we learned about dynamics, and we learned about dominant seventh chords. And I want you guys to incorporate that in our next lessons, okay? So I'll see you next lesson. Here we go. See you later. All right, let's hear it for Jen.